This lesson will focus on what we did for this week. I want to bring your attention to our Google Classroom. I've posted up every lesson the material that we explore. If you are not familiar with visual techniques, I suggest again you read through this PowerPoint. There are many visual techniques, although for this one some techniques might apply more to graphic novels or comics, but either way they are still visual techniques. This PDF is also very useful as well. Don't worry about the alarm tables for now, because these will help you write a structured response. There is a reading of the rabbits on YouTube, so that's the link. And also Miss Newen, your fundamentals teacher, who is also on our Google Classroom page, will post material. I believe that she has already taught you visual techniques where you had to match up the terms to the correct definition. This link is also notes that we made during class, exploring what this picture book is about and how meaning is created in the picture book. And don't forget that in Google Classroom, if you click on this little arrow, you can copy and paste the link and it will take you straight to our weekly schedule. So as you can see here, I have filled in what we've done every lesson, some notes or links that you should be looking at. Okay, so I thought I would go through the notes first. So I hope that you have watched the YouTube video first of the rabbits. If you have not, I suggest you do. If you happen to have a copy of the book, by all means, you can read through it. Otherwise, unfortunately, we're just going to have to rely on this scanned copy. It's not the best quality and it's not very clear. You could try, and actually the quality is 480p, so that's the highest it'll go. So I'll start off with explaining that the Rabbits is a picture book. It's an allegory of the British colonization or invasion, depending on how you want to use the word, of Australia, and the destruction of Aboriginal culture and killing Aboriginal people. So basically how the British came to Australia and they, destroyed the Aboriginal culture and killed a lot of Aboriginal people. Invasion means to invade, to enter without permission, often using violence. Destruction means to destroy, to ruin. The word allegory means it is a story, a poem, or a picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a political or moral one. Which means that this picture book, even though it shows animals, it is not literally about animals. The animals are used to represent a culture. So the rabbits represent the British people, and then the native animals here, the native animals represent the Aboriginal people. Also in these notes, I've written the word spread. A spread means an image that crosses over to the next page. So from left to right, it covers the entire page. So when you open up the book, the left side of the book and the right side of the book, that together is one spread. I have explained in brackets which page numbers they should be. However, there aren't actual page numbers in the book. So first of all, you need to think about, well, why did the illustrator and the author choose the rabbits as an animal to represent British people? Think about their population. Thinking about how rabbits breed very quickly. So breeding means have babies. rabbits multiply very quickly. So the idea of, numerous rabbits invading Australia. And then look at the native animals here. So why are native animals used to represent Aboriginal people? Because Aboriginal people are the first people of Australia. They belong there. It is their home. That's why the author and illustrator have used native animals to represent this. Just going to give you guys a chance to, if you want to pause the video, to go back to the YouTube, and also give you a chance to just read through this, and also, if possible, I would like you to go to this spread here and we will be talking about that. Okay, so I wanted to bring your attention to the progression of the story. So in the first page, first spread, you see a snake, and it is hidden in this rocky cave and it's looking out. Now this picture isn't very clear, but you can see this little chimney and some smoke coming out, and you can read the text as well that also tells the story. Now with the next page, we see a clear divide between rabbits and the native animals, because the native animals are very hesitant. They look like kangaroos. You can call them kangaroos if you want, or wallabies, and you can say that they're on this side and the rabbits are on that side. Now the illustrator has purposefully drawn them that way to show how there's a clear divide. You can see these rabbits with their machines. Another technique, visual technique, would be the vector lines. So these two lines here, and what are they? They are actually the wheel tracks or tire tracks of this vehicle. Here we have in the foreground, that's another technique, foreground meaning at the front, we have this rabbit. He seems to be holding up this instrument, and when I asked the class what they thought of as soon as they saw this page, some said experiments, some said scientific experimentation, and in the mid-ground, which is in the middle, not the background, not the front, but the middle, we see a rabbit holding up a lizard to a test tube, almost as if testing it and experimenting and probing. Probing means to kind of like probing means to look for something. So this rabbit in the foreground, look at its glasses as well. So the emphasis on the eyes. Eyes are used to look at things, to think about things, to learn perhaps. Even look at the punctuation here. There's meant to be 3 dots there, but this picture isn't very clear. The 3 dots is what we call an ellipsis. E-double-L-I-P-S-I-S. An ellipsis is 3 dots, one after the other, used to create suspense. Here we have a map, couple more, and this rabbit is also using a quill, which is, back in those days, it was a pen dipped in ink, used to record in his journal his observations of the land. You can see here in the background a rabbit here looking through a telescope in the distance, a native animal looking up at this rabbit, and over here we have some sort of interaction between the rabbits and the native animals. And the text says, and I'm just going to try and read it. And the text says, but our old people warned us, be careful, they won't understand the right ways. So be careful is a language technique called imperative language or command. Command is to tell someone to do it. You don't give them an option, you don't give them a choice, you command them. So be careful. So these words, and there's a full stop there, and plus this is also in bold as well, that stands out a little bit. So this is like a warning as well, a caution, a word of caution. In the next page, some visual techniques. The most obvious one, what jumps out on this spread, it's this gigantic, extremely large ship. So that's salience. And it is arriving. There are more rabbits arriving. They came by water. So this ship is almost like intimidating in its structure. And you can see that the rabbits are dressed in this naval uniform or military uniform. This must be the general perhaps, because he's got the large hat and he's directing, his body language shows he's moving forward. And again, they're waving this flag. This symbol, this is actually called a motif. A motif, M-O-T-I-F. A motif is a repeated image or word throughout a story that adds meaning. So you'll see this flag in many spreads or pages, and it has a particular meaning. Think about the direction of the arrows. What does this flag symbolize? Somebody in class also said it looks very similar to the British flag, but you could also interpret it as expansion, because these arrows are moving outwards, which means they're taking over, they're getting longer. Here we have the rabbits building their homes, and the native animals in the border watching below, almost as if they're helpless. And you can see in the back, the buildings are currently being constructed. You can see these little jigsaw puzzles. And this picture represents what it would look like after it finishes. In the next image, and this is one of my favorite spreads, it's highly detailed, and it's not very clear in this YouTube video, but I will explain to you what some little details are. These are obviously sheep. Now, the way they're drawn, they're actually quite ugly sheep. If you look at their faces, you can't see their eyes. They're not cute at all. But the mouth and the teeth are the most obvious or clear things as a feature of these sheep. And those teeth and the mouth, they emphasize how they're eating the grass, they're consuming the grass, or this lush green grass in the foreground. You've got these massive sheep, and in the midground, this is the midground in the middle, just behind these sheep, you have these cattle led by these rabbits. So sheep and cows are brought over for the purpose of agriculture and farming. So they are foreign animals. Foreign meaning not originally from here. And of course, this is, this is all about trade and the economy. The sheep also have these little number tag as well, which is what they do on the farms. They tag and number their animals. Also, if you notice, the cows have these little dotted lines. What do they remind you of? Have you ever been to a butcher's shop to buy meat and you've seen, like, you know, posters of, like, you know, telling you what part of the cow is called what? So the rump, the steak, and so forth. And then you can see train tracks along here. And there's a train pulling more animals and more cattle and supply. And they're transporting goods. This train is also moving in the right direction, towards the right, moving this way. We know this because the smoke is coming out from that way and the train is facing this way. And all the supplies are behind it. Now, it's not very clear in this YouTube video, but this yellow bit here in the background, in the far distance, you see the native animals on this yellow piece of land. Now, this yellow land and brownish land here as well can represent many things. Can represent how the grass has been consumed and it's turned yellow. It's just dirt and dead grass perhaps. So they have no food to eat. And in the distance you have even more endless green grass, but filled with these sheep. So it's almost like the green and also the foreign animals, these sheep and cattle, are taking over the land and they're eating all of the food. If you read the text, it does say something like they brought other animals, we liked some of the food and we liked some of the animals, but some of the food made us sick. Here we have almost, it looks like it's a rip. Someone's ripped out the picture and stuck it on this page. This is actually part of the illustration. An insert. An insert is something that you put inside something else. So this insert image shows a clear difference, and that technique we call is juxtaposition, where you place two contrasting, very different images side by side. On this side we have this, lush green grass, full of life, full of animals, but then here we have these browny grey tones, and it represents death. It shows the destruction. So the lake itself has dried up. We know this is a lake because there are dead fish here as well. So the water source, and just over here you can see a bit of water too, but the water source has depleted because these foreign animals are drinking all the water. And in terms of vectors or the reading path, when your eyes start from here and they travel out. They go along here and they go along here, and we go outwards because these little feet, these little footprints are arrows and they point outwards, showing that that animals started from this little puddle of water and are moving out to find more water. Here we have the rabbits under the night sky. Again, it's almost like they're plotting something, they're planning. Then here we have the flag again. And then here we have these like little lines being drawn into the ground. And in the hills or the mountains, they've been cut to put in these pipelines. They look like pipelines or maybe bridges. So again, the natural landscape itself has been violated, it's been cut open, it's been dissected to make way for the rabbits so that they can change the land to fit how they live, which is actually opposite to how Aboriginal people live as well, because Aboriginal people live with the land, they don't abuse the land. So this is not just one page, this is like a close-up of part of the page. Here we have fighting, so war, and look at the color scheme as well. So that was quite quick. I'll just go back again. The color scheme is sepia, S-E-P-I-A. So the brown tones represent something in the past, in the history. And these little picture cutouts are almost a reminder of like photographs as well. And it's like a montage, like a sequence of images showing a fight and a battle. Again, we have this flag here as well. Look at the contrast between the weapons that the rabbits use and also the weapons that the native animals use. Look at how the buildings are on fire, the cattle itself killed, the native animals hacking away at the fencing. Again, machine guns are used. And over here, these words are inscribed as might equals right. And think about, what does might mean? Might in grammar can mean maybe, but might also means mighty, strong, strength, power. And then the equal sign. And then right, R-I-G-H-T. Right can mean your right hand, or right can mean correct, or right can mean you are entitled, you are allowed to, you've been given permission to do something. So that might equals right is almost like a slogan, as if the rabbits think, oh, well, we have the power, therefore we have the right to take over this land. Another motif besides the flag is this clock that's actually been used to replace the eyes. If you read through the book, you will see this little clock everywhere. Think about what that represents as well, time in history. Over here, this is not very clear, but this page, there's not a lot going on, but it does say we lost the fight. That's a truncated sentence, which means that it's a short sentence, but it's a powerful sentence. So defeat, D-E-F-E-A-T, that means you lose. So here we have just the landscape, it's black, and these little drawings of these animals curled up. So these are ghostly drawings. Looks like a ghost because they're so faint, they're hard to see. These animals are all dead, they're buried underground. And then here you can see these poor native animals who are survivors. They're captured, they're chained up, and you can see this rabbit holding a gun, watching over them. And also these native animals, their faces aren't very clear. They're almost as if they have their heads bowed down. Again, on this page, salience, the red machines are the most salient, and the orangey red tones make us feel as if the earth is on fire. These machines are harvesting the wheat that's being grown. So you can see the conveyor belt that's been stretched out, and all these wheat that's grown, they travel up there and they get processed for farming, for agriculture farming. The machine also looks like a fish head in a way, or a giant monstrous head, and the conveyor belt looks like teeth. And those are the eyes, and the mouth is extremely large. And in the distance, so this is the foreground, but in the distance you see these barren landscape where the paths have been made by the machines and there's nothing growing there because the land itself, the earth, has been stripped away. Here we have an illusion, which means a reference to the stolen generation, where the rabbits also take the children away. These baby native animals are depicted in almost like a balloon, hot air balloon, and you have these airplanes that are taking the babies away, the children. And then in the distance, you can see the native animals, the elders. They have their hands outstretched towards the children, but they are powerless. So I'm not going to read through everything else, but I would like you to, as a part of your practice, to read through some of my notes here. And then with the alarm questions, if we go back to Google Classroom, these two are the same. This one is more about peel paragraph, but if you just read this, I'm just going to put it side by side. The first question is identify the event in this image. So you have to choose a spread. And you can choose this one. Spread 11 is this one. You have to identify the event. What's happening here? Describe what's happening. So how do you know what's happening? Well, what do you see? So what's happening would obviously be the stolen generation. Or you can say the children, the Aboriginal children are being taken away. And then you describe, well, what can you see? Like, what are the visual features? And then you explain why the illustrator chose to draw the animals in flying kites. Why not put the animals on the ground and show the rabbits just, holding their hand and taking them away? Why are they depicted in these little flying machines? Analyze how the Aboriginal people responded to the event. So now you need to look at here. Don't forget to look at technique and look at the size of the animals. Where are they placed on the page? Are they in the front? Are they extremely large? Or are they very far in the distance and extremely small? And evaluate the effectiveness of how the message is portrayed. So when you get a question like evaluate, first you need to say, what do you see? Well, you see on this page there is blah blah blah, and you can see blah blah blah, and then you think about what is the message, and then you refer to the technique. So when you get a question like this, you need to build up. You have to start from the bottom, answer this, and work your way up. If you feel like perhaps this page is too easy, I would recommend that you do another page. Just going to go back. Let me see if I can find that page again. You could choose another page, particularly maybe one that I haven't done. So maybe this page, or this page, or this page, or even the end. So if you feel like the questions are a little bit too confusing, you could perhaps pick a page or a spread and analyze that. Find some visual features. What do you see on the page? What are the little details that you see as well? Because you have to look very carefully in case you miss something. And what does it mean? What does it represent? what kind of meaning does it give for us. When you're done with that, you can write up your notes. Don't forget to take a screenshot of the page that you chose, just so I know which page you're referring to. And you can go onto Google Classroom, and I'll bring it up again, and submit it here. So make sure that if it's a Google Docs, online Google Docs, that you give me not sharing permission, you give me editing permission, so that I can make some notes. Otherwise, if it's set to view only, then I'm unable to give you feedback. Otherwise, you can type it up on a normal Microsoft Word document. So for example, this is my own Microsoft Word document. Just start up a new one, type up some of your answers, save it, then upload it. And then just pop it in this one called the homework for the rabbits. If you open that, the instructions, they're due by this Sunday 6 p.m. So it does say your 5 questions, and the 5 questions refer to those identify, explain, analyze, evaluate questions. If they're too confusing, especially for those who have been at home for the past 2 weeks, you're more than welcome to just pick a page and, write some notes about what do you see, what do you observe, what do you think it means, what do you think it represents, and those kind of things. I think that's all for today's lesson. I also recommend reading about Australia's treatment of Aboriginal people in history. Now, these notes I have not uploaded onto Google Classroom because they were written on the whiteboard. However, they are here. So if you scroll down to Feb 2 and you open up this pink PDF, this is actually really long. I know it's 10 pages, it's a lot of reading. Instead, I just want you to focus on page 1, what paternalistic view means. The second page, actually not the second page, sorry. So just look at the first page, paternalism. Then Protection Act, policy of protection. Policy of assimilation. Integration. And then there's also self-determination. So what I'll do is, on our weekly schedule, I'm going to write the following just to remind you: a policy of paternalism, paternalistic view, policy, and this is in order of the events that happened in Australia, the policies that were made to kind of control and take over the Aboriginal people's lives. So you should have already learned a little bit about Australian history in terms of the government taking away the half-blood or mixed blood children, not giving Aboriginal people rights or equal pay, and the children that were taken away, the girls were taught to, well, the boys and girls were taught to live the white way, act like a white person, to forget about their own Aboriginal culture. The girls were taught to cook and clean. These are domestic duties, and the boys were made to work on farms. So using this knowledge, you will have an idea of, the way that the Aboriginal people were mistreated by the Australian government. Starting from next week, we're going to look at poetry, because we spent the first 2 weeks looking at visual techniques, picture books, and maybe we will do short films. I might be changing these around. I might focus a lot on short stories and so forth. We probably won't look at this poem. I'm actually thinking of doing a practice paper in preparation for your assessment task, which will happen at the end of this term. So for those who missed out on 2 weeks, don't panic. We'll make sure that you are prepared for it. But if you can just review the few lessons, of the few YouTube lessons that I've put up, and attempt some of the work and just send that to me, that would be great. Don't forget, we did do a 2013 HSC listening paper that you could also attempt as well, and it's all in Google Classroom. Okay, I think that's all. If you have any questions, please feel free to post on Google Classroom, and I will be seeing hopefully most of you back sometime, I think towards the end of next week. And I will also prepare everybody for a wide reading task, which is part of our Module A language, text in context topic. Okay, thank you for watching and listening.